Hello again, ladies and gentlemen. So we're going to look at our next example, which takes it up just a step further because I want to show you all of the really terrifying problems so you can have an example of everything. So here we have an example 5. My equation starts with 2x to the second power plus 16x minus 40. And it says in this example, first thing we want to do is factor out the GCF. Now, if you can recall, the GCF is going to be our greatest common factor. There is a number that divides by 2, 16, and 40 all at the same time. So that number is 2 because 2 divides by 2, 16 divides by 2, and 40 also divides by 2. When I do that, remember it's like the undistributing property. We're doing the reverse of the distributive property. So I divide by 2, I divide by 2, I divide by 2. All of those things are going to kind of swoosh out backwards from distributive property because when we distribute, we multiply times each value with the rainbow. So when I factor out or find a GCF, I'm going to do the same thing but backwards. I'm going to take or divide each one of those things by the GCF. When I do that, I wind up with 2 times x to the second plus 8x minus 20. So I'm going to start by writing that here on my paper. So I have 2 being multiplied by, see my pencil box and my markers, x squared minus 8x, plus 8x, and then minus 20. So this is what I have, and what we learned before, we talked about before, at least in one of the previous slides, is that when I have this, we're going to use that rule before, and it's the first time we're seeing it, so I'm going to go back to it. But before I do, we'll start by identifying our A, B, and C. Now, if you have your notes and you can watch both, you'll see that we already identified our A, B, and C, and our A is 1, our B is a positive 8, and our C is going to be a negative 20. And we're going to do our M and our A multiply. So I multiply A times C, positive 1 times a negative 20. Is that blurry? Just a little bit. Okay. So 1 times negative 20 gives me a negative 20 on the M side. On the A side, I have B, which is a positive 8. And according to your notes, what it says is if my M, which is the A times C side, is negative, then the factors will have different signs. So that means when I write out my factors, I'm going to have one positive and one negative. And it says the larger of the two factors will be the same as the A or the B. So back over here, I have all of my factors written out. And so we're going to start by finding all of the factors of 20. Again, I'm going to have one positive, one negative, and the biggest one should match that sign, which is positive. So we start with the easy one. 1 and 20. The biggest one has to be positive, so that means the smallest one is going to be negative. We have 2. 2 and 10. The big number needs to match. The small one gets a negative. And that's only because the biggest one needs to match whatever this sign is. 3. 3 does not divide by 20 evenly. 4 does. I have 4 and 5. 5 is already here. So I'm done with all of my factors. It is that easy if you go in order, which is why I keep reiterating, please go in order. Excuse me, I burped. So now what I want to do is I'm going to add these two things together and see which one gives me a positive 8. So I have negative 1 plus 20. That gives me a positive 19. I have negative 2 plus 10. That gives me a positive 8. I have negative 4 plus 5. That's going to give me a positive 1. This is the group that is the winner, winner, chicken dinner. And I'm going to plug that into my x. Remember, at the top we had A times C, which was negative 20. At the bottom we had B, which was 8. I'll take my two factors that I just found, negative 2 and positive 10. I placed them here. We're going to divide both of these by 1, which was our A term, and now we can write this in factor form, bringing that denominator up to the front of our factor. So we're going to have 1x minus 2 and 1x plus 10. Those are our factors. We put our parentheses around it to show that it's factored form. Don't forget that we did factor out our GCF at the beginning of the problem. So at the end of my problem, I have to put back the GCF into our problem. So if you're looking back at your notes, and I'll put it back over there in a second, I'm pulling it up. It said to put it in factor form. We did that. And then if we were going to solve this, I could either write this as 2x minus 4, or, oh, I'll write them both so you can see it. And this would be times x plus 10, or it could be x minus 2 can I write that? Yeah. Well, when we go to solve it, it's going to wind up being the same answer as far as our x values are equal. It says, or 2x plus 20. Either way that I write this, when I go to solve for my two x-intercepts, I wind up with 2x minus 4. Sorry, we do math in pencil. When I solve for x in this equation, I add 4 to both sides, so I have 2x equals 4. I divide by 2, so x is equal to a positive 2 for my x-intercept. If I had distributed the 2 to the other equation, and I have 2x plus 20, if I solve for the x-intercept, I subtract 20 from both sides. I have 2x equals a negative 20, divide by 2, and x equals a negative 10. So my two x-intercepts will be a positive 2 and a negative 10. Those would be my solutions. Again, if I take my value that I had back up here and I multiplied it out using our distributive property, I would wind up with my original answer, which was 2x squared plus 16x minus 40. And that's it.